Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my photography chat live stream where we come together as a community and talk about photography, this passion that we have. And as always, I like the audience to drive the conversation. So if you have any questions or would like to talk about anything, just let me know. So while those come in the meantime, I'd like to talk about what I've been up to this week. And I've been doing some. I went to Conowingo Dam, which is kind of known for its bald eagles, on Friday, and uh, eh, it was a little rough. There were some eagles. I think what David was saying is that they had closed the dam for 2 weeks, and they shut the water off so that there weren't fish going into the river. So the eagles kind of probably found another spot. Oh, that said, I did get a few shots, and I'll share those with you, but they weren't very good. They were just kind of okay. But I took my OM3 with my 300 f4 and the 1.4 teleconverter, as well as a few others. There's a lot of OM system shooters there, as well as the usual suspects: Canon, Nikon, Sony, and yeah, people got some good shots there, I think. But yeah, I didn't have much luck myself. The challenge for me is I spend a lot of time talking to the others in the group, helping them when they need it, if at all, and with settings and things like that. And then when I'm going out to shoot, my mind is not necessarily on the shooting itself. Uh, I had so many challenges for whatever reason. Uh, my OM3 would not autofocus at all. I would half press the shutter button, I would push the A off on button, and it would not focus. I turned the camera off and back on, didn't make any difference. And then, I would check the focus clutch, things like that. It was kind of weird, and it did start focusing again, and I can't remember exactly what I did. But I think what might have happened is I accidentally pushed the CP button, the computational button on the back of the camera. So that was doing something. I don't know. Um, the smart thing to do would have been to use the custom modes I set up for birding and just dial it into C2. I have C2 and C3 set up for birding and see if that resolved the issue. Because when I'm in like just shutter priority or manual mode, I'm always changing settings constantly, and you never know what's going to interfere with the other. But that kind of threw me off a bit. I dismounted the lens, put it back on. I was just, why won't this thing focus? I just couldn't understand, and I didn't see anything immediately on the screen. Uh, Fortunately, didn't really miss any shots. Uh, because there wasn't a lot of action going on, but it was a little frustrating. So I'm gonna take it out. I took it out again, the OM3 yesterday, to do some fireworks, and performed just fine. I didn't have any problems with the autofocus. So I had some setting on there just not right. Maybe I pushed the LN function button on the lens. I can't figure it out, but it goes to show you, even like as much experience as I have with OM systems and Olympus, I still screw things up sometimes somehow. Uh, but there was that, and also I have I'm going to do a portrait session today. It's not a paid shoot. It's primarily to help one of my friends uh, with her settings. She shoots a Canon R8, and primarily with lighting actually, because the settings in the camera are pretty straightforward. But I'm going to help her out with the lighting. So I have my bag all packed up, and it's pretty compact setup. I got 3 light stands, 3 umbrellas, and a Fresnel lens, and then 3 flashes and a trigger. And I think I can do a simple 3 light setup, maybe 2 umbrellas in front, and rim light with the Fresnel lens in the back, or do one light Fresnel lens type lighting for more dramatic stuff. It's an older gentleman, so you know, I want to try and bring out the texture. So when that's done, I'll share those next week in next week's stream. Some of the shots I got from there. But you know, I packed basically. I'm just going to take the 12 to 40, or I'm sorry, the 12 to 45 f4 Pro for that, and one other prime that is for Micro Four Thirds. It hasn't been released yet, so I have to. I can't really tell you what it is, but I'm going to try and do a few portrait shots with it. But primarily going to be doing the 12 to 45 f4. And you know, a lot of times when people think about portraits, you know, they think about, you know, fast, wide open lenses for the shallower depth of field. But when you're doing more studio type photography, a lot of times I'm shooting at f5.6. And if you watch a lot of Gavin Hoey's live streams and videos, he shoots at f5.6 on his OM1 because he does a lot of in studio portraits. So that's why I said I'll just bring the 12 to 45, and then if I want to do some wide shots, I can do wide shots, and then if I want to do a headshot, you know, I can zoom into 45. So it's a really versatile lens. It is a lens that I'm so happy that I got, because my 12 to 40 f2.8, which I loved after 10 years, just finally died on me. And I don't blame the lens, because that lens went through hell, including getting filled up with ice from the bottom up, just packed with ice. I set it in my house for a month over the heater, dried it out, and it worked for many, many years, even after that incident, albeit with water spots all inside the internal lenses. But you know, it was good enough. You know, you can't really see the, or I didn't have, there wasn't enough drop in image quality, if any, with all those water spots in there. But now that I got to 12 to 45 f4, I love that it's just that little bit more compact. I think it's easily 100, 200 grams lighter and smaller, you know, overall. It takes a 58 millimeter thread instead of a 62. So in practice, it's not a lot smaller, but you know, on paper, it looks like it's significantly smaller, and it does fit in the bag easier. But I think the trade-off for the one stop of light may not be worth it for a lot of people. A lot of people would probably still rather have the f2.8 on the 12 to 40. But for me, you know, the smaller, the lighter, the better, you know, because I rarely shoot wide open. It's just not, you know, you don't get, I just don't have too many scenarios where I need shallow depth of field, or if I'm in low light, I'll use a flash. So, you know, everybody's style is a little bit different. You know, if you're full on natural light photographer, yeah, fast lens helps a lot. And if you like to use that shallow depth of field for creative reasons, then, you know, prime or a 2.8 would be way better. But I found in practice, you know, shooting it faster than f2.8 is more problematic for me than useful, or it doesn't make much difference in the images that I take. So those are my thoughts on that. I can show you my bag, actually, that I packed for the shoot today. Let's see. There's a button here somewhere, and I think, and then I'll get to the chat. I'll just share with you. Yeah, good enough. So let me see if I can. So I'm going to take, you know, just this backpack, and I have the tripod strapped to the front. I really like this backpack. I never did a review on it. You know, I bought this early this year, or maybe last year, and it's been a great backpack from K&F. But I'll just start at the top. And this is just a single portrait shoot. But in the top, I have two S-mount brackets for the flashes. And then I have, you know, a 6-foot USB-C cable and, of course, an Anker branded power supply. Because I'm gonna try and set up on a tripod, and I'm just gonna, you know, this is really for the Canon. The Canon battery is so small in the Canon R8. I can't rely on it, so I'm just gonna plug it into the power bank, so I don't have to worry about the battery. And I do that a lot, actually, is I'll plug in a power bank into the camera while I'm doing the shoot. And then inside, I have, let me see if I can pick this up without spilling everything out. So inside I have my Godox, I have two Godox V1s and the Godox V480. I have a little IT20 here. I don't know why. I probably won't use it. And then of course the a radio trigger over here. And then here's my 12-45. This is my OM3 with the prime lens I'll be reviewing later when it gets announced. And then here's the Canon R8 because the person I'm helping also uses a Canon R8. So I just thought I'd bring this, you know, so that we could shoot side by side for a little bit. But I'm going to be primarily using my OM3. But the Canon R8 with the kit 24-105 kit lens, so it's like an f4 to f7.3, something like that. And then the 50mm f1.8 prime lens for the Canon, and that's probably what I'll be using to shoot. Well, no, I'll probably primarily use this 24-105 since we're going to be using flash. But I brought the 50 just in case, you know. But yeah, I love this 12-45. This thing is awesome. And I have my circular polarizer on there. So everything is good to go. And everything packs up very nicely in this little backpack. And then I'll show you my light stand bag. But there's little hook loops in the front just to kind of make everything nice and tidy. And we're good to go. And then for my lighting equipment, I have just a light bag here. The Fresnel lens didn't quite fit, but it's secure. But I have 3 light stands, very compact. And these extend, I think, up to 7 feet. So they're actually a little taller than I need, except for the rim lighting. Rim lighting, the higher the better, a lot of cases. So I have 3 of these. And then I brought 3 umbrellas. I'll probably only need 2. And then the, you know, light stand adapters for the flash and the umbrella. And then just a simple little Fresnel lens that I'm going to mount. So I'll have to use the S bracket to mount this. And that's it. So I can, whoops. I hate when that happens. I snagged one of the, there. So I can, you know, I can just go out with this one light stand bag and my backpack, and I have a full portrait setup. And the lighting is, you know, the V1s are, and including the V480, are more than powerful enough. If I wanted to do something outside, even I could do an outdoor portrait session. But typically what I would do is just bring like my 8200s. Those are much better for outdoor. But you know, I could get away in a pinch. I could use the V1s and do even, you know, outdoor portraiture. Uh, I'd probably bring an ND filter if I was going to do that. But since I'm going to be indoors, I don't need the ND filter. But that's it for that. And like I said, I'll share those photos probably next week after I take care of everything, you know, to the shoot today. Okay, so all that said, let me go to the chat section and see how everybody's doing, if there's any questions. I see the Marcia, good to see you from Florida. Awesome. Yeah, I had a great Thanksgiving. By the way, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful week or holiday. I know I ate quite a bit. Oh, yeah, I put on like 2 pounds already. It's terrible. And Anthony, good to see you from Canada. And Jeff, good to see you as always. Adam, good morning. And Anthony has a question. Says, I'm interested to know what other Micro Four Thirds want to see from Panasonic and OM Systems in the new year. Gosh, I don't know. Be honest, I'm so content with the gear that I have now. I don't have any needs or wants. Now, if I had to really pick something, and it wouldn't necessarily be for me, but I would love to see them come out with like an OM20, like a entry-level sub $500 camera to get people into the system that has, you know, phase detect, a mic jack, screen. It can go either way, flippy or fully articulating. And then also have the subject detect in it. You know, have reliable subject detect and autofocus. I'd like to see some improvements there. You know, why do we have to wait for the flagship camera to have everything before it trickles down? Why not bring out an entry-level camera that has their latest or improved autofocusing? That would be nice. But it doesn't need to be weather sealed or have dual card slots. Maybe have a little bit of a retro vibe to it just to draw some attention on the shelf. And I wouldn't mind if they brought back the metal build. It's not critical, but I really enjoyed, you know, my EM10 Mark II with the metal build. So if they came out with a camera, that would be what I'd want to see, is an entry-level camera for OM Systems to get people back into the system. From Panasonic, you know, they seem to have dropped the ball on Micro Four Thirds. They, you know, there's no rumors, there's no, you know, they came out with the G9 Mark II, which is terrific camera, and it's really at a good price right now. It's so tempting, but I just don't need it. But they could do the same. They could sort of come out with maybe a rangefinder style camera, because OM Systems, they're not going to make a Pen F2. We can just I don't think they are anyway going to come out with one. So this is where I think Panasonic can come in and capture people that want to get a rangefinder style camera that'll compete with, say, the Fujifilm X-Z5. That's what they need to do, and it needs to have basically everything the G9 Mark II can do. Maybe it has to be tempered a little bit because it is going to be a smaller body. So maybe the IBIS not as strong, maybe, you know, the buffers, and, you know, there's going to be some compromises due to the miniaturization of the components that are in the G9 Mark II. But have it at least have the same autofocusing system and bring in, uh, phase detect with auto subject detect, and then try and improve on that. And then that price point, I would say, yeah, I would say they're going to be at least $1,000 for something like that, 1,000 to 1,500. There's I just don't see them being able to make something like that, miniaturize a G9 Mark II into a rangefinder style camera and make that price point less than 1,000. That's just not going to happen. So that's a good question, Anthony. Actually, I think those two cameras in 2025 would really, really draw a lot of new business for uh, people into the OM system, Micro Four Thirds mount, and then uh, people that are looking for a rangefinder style camera that is extremely capable, right? Um, but at a price point lower than the Fuji XE5, for example. It can't be more than an XE5. That would be problematic. But if they can bring it at a price point for less than the XE5, then I think they'll have something on their hands, and make the styling nice. I really think the GX9 was a very handsome camera, although a little bit utilitarian. So try to give it, just like the S9, it's very utilitarian. Unlike Sigma's BF, which is basically the same camera, it's very stylish. We don't need to go that extreme, but I think a rangefinder style camera from Lumix, maybe around 12, 1300, that is somewhat more stylish than an S9, but not as utilitarian as a GX9. Because in practice, the difference in image quality between an APS-C and a Micro Four Thirds is pretty nominal. And, so I don't think it's going to have a problem when it goes to the influencers and creators online that are going to review a camera like that. Same goes for like an Olympus or OM Systems OM20 camera. Given the price point, if it can perform better than the other entry-level cameras, or at least be on par, but have something more stylish. And this is where I think OM Systems and Panasonic is really lacking, is their marketing. They're just not connecting with people. Okay? Fuji is a great example of really crazy marketing that people somehow they want their cameras, and people can add, people want a Fujifilm camera for whatever reason, the X100s, the XE5s, the XT5, they want Fujifilm cameras, and not for any technical reasons. It's all marketing. Maybe it's their Fujifilm recipes and that whole culture. Maybe it's kind of the retro vibe that they give off, somehow more so than OM Systems. Because I mean, look at that. I forget what that X half camera that Fuji made. Nobody else could pull that off. Nobody else could pull off an X half camera with no RAW. Somehow Fuji does it. So Fuji, they're about probably one of the best at marketing cameras that really shouldn't be able to compete, because of the autofocus. I get it. I mean, you can get the autofocus to be fairly reliable, and a lot of people use it professionally. I don't want to say there's anything majorly wrong with the autofocus in the Fujifilm system, but the perception is that OM Systems, Panasonic is even better than Fujifilm when it comes to autofocus. At least that's the impression that I get. In practice, I don't see much difference. They all seem to perform pretty well. And I shoot everything from Sony A7R5, Canon R8, things like that. I'm sorry, Mike. If the quality of my audio goes down a little bit, it's my neighbor's leaf blowing. But yeah, the marketing, they just need to nail their marketing somehow. And I think to some extent, the wildlife marketing that OM System did was successful and did do what they wanted it to do, uh, except for getting a much larger market share. I don't think they got as much as they thought they would, but they did target, and wildlife photographers are buying their cameras and their lenses. I see it all the time. OM System cameras out there for wildlife. Uh, and I really haven't heard anybody say anything bad about the OM Systems when it comes to sports action wildlife photography in terms of the autofocusing performance and things like that. But they do need to improve and market. They need to improve their marketing, though, so that people want to buy their cameras. And they're just not connecting with new buyers for whatever reason. They're just not connecting. And I'm not one to tell them how to do it. I don't have the first clue. But that would do it. But those are the two cameras I'd like to see that I think would definitely drive some sales and attention to both companies and expand their market share, right? Just my opinion. Okay. And Thomas, good to see you from Georgia. 4 degrees Celsius. Wow. I don't know what the temperature is here. I know we were right at below freezing this morning, I think. But it's warmed up. It says 39 degrees right now, which is, I guess, that's not too bad, as long as there's no wind. Okay, let's see. Peter says, I can hear you, but a little muted. Oh, all right. Let me crank up the audio a little bit. There. That should be a little louder. Okay, shoveled out from some heavy wet snow here. Wow. Wow. Yeah, parts of the country are already getting snow. And any shot flakes ever do those, Rob? No. Hasn't snowed this year yet. Or this coming winter. I did some years and years ago with my TG5, but I haven't gotten back into it because it just doesn't snow very often here. And when it snows, I don't like to go out. It's too cold. But good to see you, Ethan. And let's see. This is Adam says, oh, sorry. I'd like to ask for an opinion on the TT Artisan 50mm f1.2. I own the Ollie TT25 f2. I enjoy shooting with the TT. I'm wondering if it makes sense to switch from Ollie 45 to the TT50. No. If I recall that the 50 f1.2 is is manual focus, I don't see any reason to switch to it. It's 2/3 of a stop brighter. God, this leaf blowing action is killing me. I don't know if you guys can hear, but it's really loud. So, okay, back. I'm so distracted by this leaf blower. Short answer is no. Don't buy the 50 f2 and try and shoot with it over the 45-1.8. The 50 f1.2 can be a little soft wide open, and this leaf blower is driving me nuts. I can't even hear myself talk. He's like right at my window. So, the main thing is you lose autofocus. You don't really gain that much light performance, low light performance. And as far as depth of field goes, it's nominal difference between the two. Again, it's only 2/3 of a stop. Because typically with the 45, if you're doing waist up type shots, portrait work, which is a common use for that lens, you'll be at a distance where the difference in the depth of field is not that big a deal. And again, I think losing the autofocus and not getting as sharp an image wide open as the f1.8, the 45, there's no reason to buy it. Okay, sound is better. Okay, good. So I'll be in your area Christmas time. I agree. The wind is a killer when it's cold. Yeah. Yeah, come on out and see us. And yeah, you seem to come up here like every winter. That's cool. And then Adam says, shooting the Fuji X-T30 alongside my OM1 Mark II, low light files seem much better, but maybe I'm just used to the OM RAW files when dealing with noise. Did learn to shut the grain simulator off the Fuji. So I'm curious, do you mean the X-T30 seems much better, or the OM1 Mark II seems much better? When I had the X-T30, I didn't shoot it very much, but I did really like the images I got from it. I think that 26 megapixel sensor from Fuji is awesome. The 40 megapixel, I'm not as big a fan of that I have like on my XH2. Mainly because you have to have, you have to have really sharp lenses to use with it. So it's a little bit overkill. But the images I get from it are still wonderful, out of the XH2. But I haven't done any like real comparisons in terms of noise between, say, an X-T30 and my OM system cameras. I may have done a video in the past like that, but since I use DxO and the kind of photography I do, the noise performance is differences between full frame, APS-C, Micro Four Thirds, even my TG5. Differences in noise is irrelevant to me because of the kind of photography that I do and the way I process my images, and knowing the limitations of each camera, knowing your gear, you'll always get a better image out of it, and the compromises end up not being really issues, right, to your photography when you're switching using different camera systems. You can take fantastic photos with any camera system if you know your camera system inside and out. And the gear, people say it all the time, the gear really doesn't matter, right? I know we like to compare camera systems in their technical specs and their performance for noise, dynamic range, but I'm just at a point now where these things are irrelevant to my photography. My goal is really to capture the best image I can that's interesting and functional, serves a purpose, gives us information, tells a story, whatever. And I'm not worried too much about what gear I'm using. But that said, I do enjoy using different gear because they all give you a little different character. Like my Fuji is very, very different from my OM system cameras. As is my Sony cameras, very different from any of those two cameras. And I really enjoy like my Nikon DF and my Pentax monochrome. These cameras all give different feel to my images. And that's what I enjoy about the different camera systems. I don't really care about if, I can get better noise performance out of my Nikon DF, say, versus my OM system cameras. because I'm going to shoot the cameras and do different things. I'm going to shoot different things with a different camera and play on their strengths. You know, I just watched a video by Eric Jennings. I don't know if you guys remember. He was on a live stream with me last year. But, you know, he is the gas channel. He's gone through so much gear. He doesn't even keep the cameras a lot of times, you know, outside of the return window. He'll return them, you know, almost right away after using them for a little bit. And he's kind of coming into that same, well, his last video was about, he wanted to he was trying to find the perfect camera, and he knows there's no perfect camera, but you know, a camera that will do sports action of his kids. And then he wanted a camera that he can have like an everyday camera, but he can't find a camera that'll do both well, right? Because his everyday camera, he wants to be compact and sort of pocketable like the X100 series. But then he needs a sports action capable camera, so he bought a Nikon Z5 Mark III, or is it the Mark II? Yeah, the Mark II. He bought a Z5 Mark II with whatever telephoto, so he can do his kids' sports. But he said it kills him that, you know, one camera is going to be sitting on the shelf and not be used because it doesn't fit his criteria for what he's going to go out and shoot. And I thought about it, and I thought to myself, you know, he kind of has a point. There really is no single camera that can do it all. You know, like if you want an everyday camera that's kind of pocketable or very, very small that you can take everywhere, it's not going to do well in sports action photography. And X100 in his case doesn't even have a telephoto lens, right? He can put attachments on it and stuff, but that's why I got the Z5 II with whatever telephoto lens it was. You know, but I get where he's coming from. You know, I guess to me, Micro Four Thirds would solve all his problems from my perspective, but I'm not sure what it was that, because he had the OM3 for a little bit, he's had the OM5 for a little bit, he even had the OM1. But take the OM5 or the, I guess the OM5 is a little smaller, but the OM5, I think would almost solve all of his problems because it's compact, it's portable, it's weatherproof. A lot of criteria that I was looking for in an everyday camera. And then you can throw on a, you know, whatever telephoto lens, the 50-200 would be perfect for his kid sports action type stuff, or the 40-150 f2.8. So I'm not sure why that didn't fit all the criteria that he wanted, because he seemed quite happy with the OM5 when he had it. This leaf blower, I'm so sorry about that. It's so loud. It's not like a video that I can cut this out. I mean, we're live, right? Okay, I see I missed some chat up here. So the Great Vanzini says, my OM5 shows color while shooting black and white. The display review shows black and white though. My OM5 Mark II doesn't do this. Any thoughts? The only thing I can think of is you can apply, when you say color, I mean, you got different colors, or is it just kind of tinted a color? Because the OM5 does have an art filter, or has a filter for black and white to change the tint. Let me grab, I mean, all the OM system cameras do. the menu, of course, is different on the OM. Oh, no, the OM5 Mark 1 is, I think this is the same menu. But if you look here, let me lower the brightness so you can see this. So in shooting menu 1, right, picture mode, and then go down to monochrome, right? And then when you go into monochrome, you want to go down to monochrome color. So monochrome color is set to normal, and that's the setting that you want to use. But you can change it to like blue and sepia, and what else they got in here? Purple, even green. So if you're getting a tint on your black and white images, that's probably what it is. And if you're not seeing it in your EVF, make sure that you have your EVF set to regular live view, and it's not set to like simulated optical viewfinder, or any of the other settings of live view boost and things like that. They might have changed it in the OM5 to just be night vision, but make sure all those things are off. And that's all I can think of. But if you're seeing multiple colors, like a regular color photo, but they're just muted, that sounds weird. I don't know what that would be. And Gordon, good to see you from Canada. And hello, Lewis from Ohio. And musician Lucas says, do you think the EM10 Mark II is still a great, and yeah, absolutely. Still a great camera. No question. It does so many things. I have so many videos on the M10 Mark II. It does so many things. You can do everything with that camera because it has the custom modes. They called it My Sets back then, but they have My Sets. You have all of the different bracketing options, including focus bracketing. You have live comp, live bulb. And then, of course, you have all the art filters, and then you have the nice metal build. You have the pop-up flash. You can still get batteries for it, no problem. And what's hard to find are like accessory grips and things like that. But yeah, the M10 Mark II and the image quality is fantastic out of it. It doesn't have the latest phase detect autofocus, but the autofocus works well, even without phase detect. So yeah, it's a great camera. And it's compact, lightweight, durable. And Adam says, make the OM20 similar to what they did with the EM10 Mark II. It had almost everything at that time. Multiple firmware updates then went to better. Dang it, went into the better models. Yeah, so absolutely. Absolutely. The EM10 Mark II actually improved on the EM5 Mark II in some ways, particularly the buffer. The buffer and the shutter shock. It didn't have the shutter shock like the EM5 Mark II did. The video and everything got kind of tempered. Some other things got tempered in the EM10 Mark II over the EM5. Of course, it has to be, like no weather sealing. The EM5 Mark II had a little better build quality with the metals they used. But yeah, you're right. That's a good example. What they did with the EM10 Mark II is what they could do with an OM20. Okay, and good morning, Roger. Good to see you. And my right eye ain't what it used to be, but if an M43 rangefinder came out, I would still be tempted, yeah. With your Photolab, with your I'm not sure what you mean, Photab series of videos, is there any area to avoid watching video-wise, since the software has evolved a couple of times, or is it still close enough that the info holds true? It's still close enough. Yeah, it's still close enough. I think you meant Photolab. Yeah, the Photolab videos. You know, the workflow is slightly different with the control points, but close enough that, you know, because the main difference on the control points is the control points used to be inside of the control point when you were editing. Now they put the, you know, the sliders and everything on the right, you know, on the tool panel instead of right on the image. But yeah, it works pretty much the same. And wear headphones. I know, right? Ugh. And the OM1 Mark II is much better file in low light in my... Okay, so when we were talking about, when you said that the low light was better between the Fuji X-T30 and the OM1 Mark II, you were referring to the OM1 Mark II as a much better file in low light. Really love the straight out of camera images from the X-T30. Yeah, the X-T30 is... That 26 megapixel sensor is great. And Thomas says, dang it, I can't. Thomas says, you sometimes mention using a dummy battery when charging and other things. What exactly is that? Gosh, I don't have one here. But I don't use a dummy battery for charging. I use it for running the camera. But it's basically, you know, they take the shell of a battery and run a cable inside with some, you know, voltage converters, so that you can plug it into like a USB bank, USB-C or USB power bank, and run the camera off a dummy battery. I don't know where I put those, because I've, you know, I switched to just a regular webcam that just is USB-C now. But I used to have the dummy batteries just hanging out all over here, because I would plug in my EM10 Mark II. I used my EM10 Mark II for the longest time for my live streams. But other than that, I plug the USB-C power bank directly into the camera now. And I can charge the batteries that way too. No big deal with the leaf blower. It's temporary. It's not temporary. This guy's going to be out there for, you know, hours, all morning. The leaf blower makes me feel like I'm in a dentist chair. That's funny. And let's see. The EVF and LCD show it as color picked, but the results are black and white. Yeah, so you probably have simulated optical viewfinder on, or one of the live view boost settings. So I'll double check. Okay. Outside of photography circles, do you ever see camera advertisements? No. I don't think so. Yeah. So I use my hand warmers to charge my phone. Works impressively well. Yep, you can, but I'd rather keep my hands warm than drain the batteries on my hand warmers, man. That's a critical piece of gear in the field. It's the hand warmers. But you can. I have hand warmers in the car that I keep charged up, that have a USB-C cable built in, so that I can plug whatever device into them directly. So it's designed to do that. But you know, in the wintertime, You know, I bring lots of spares because it's so cold. The batteries just don't fare well. So with that said, this is a good time to show a couple of the eagle shots I got. Let's see. So this is Conowingo Dam at sunrise. And all of these are all seagulls and cormorants, mostly seagulls out here in the background. But I thought this picture was interesting. It's sort of a, you know, you have all these fishing lines over here, and then you have these power lines over here. So I just kind of like the overlay of these two different lines or types of lines in the photo. So I titled this one like fishing lines and power lines. Not a very creative name, but I kind of like this shot here. And this is the OM3 with the 12 to 45 f4 Pro. These are just some crows. You know, I converted it to black and white because there was so little color in this image. The berries were a nice red orange, but other than that, I just felt this worked better as a black and white. Here's a cormorant. This is the OM3 with the 300 f4 and teleconverter. And, you know, I have like about 100 of these shots, you know, of his wings flapping. But I picked this one because his wings just touch the water here and you get a little bit of splash. So out of all the images that I have of this one bird flying across the water, this is the one I picked because of this one little thing. And, you know, I got really good color in the eye and the beak. So because the sun was still rising, right? It was still early. So it was, so I got really good light on this bird. Yeah, one of the first shots, bird on a stick. This is, you know, of course, a bald eagle. And, you know, it's really high up in the tree, just sitting there. It looks full, doesn't need to eat anything. And then here's one in flight. This I didn't edit too well. I need to redo this one. Particularly the eye is a little bit too dark here. And now this one is with the light directly in the right place. So I like this shot. This shot came up pretty good. This one is a heavy crop. This image here is only, let's see, 1.22 megapixels total. So right here, if I cropped it even tighter, there's less than 1 megapixel of data here. But this was the only shot that I was able to catch of the two eagles just sort of going at it a little bit, but they were so far away. I didn't get any good detail on them, but I got the action shot. And then just this juvenile bald eagle. Nice one here in flight. I got really good detail out of this one. And then here's that same bald eagle, or juvenile bald eagle, grabbing a fish out of the water. You can see the little bit of splash over here. And the problem with this is the light is so low that the wing created a shadow starting here and covered his whole face. So the lighting on his face is really bad. Here's an example, right? You can see the shadow just below the eye. Thank goodness. Now, for whatever reason, I was shooting at 5 frames per second. Again, I just messed up my settings that day. So that was the sequence from here to here in 2 shots out of 5. And then there's the last one. There's the third one out of 5 shots. And these came out okay. And that's my friend there. Let's see, there's another one flying overhead. This one came up pretty good, the juvenile bald eagle. This is actually the same scene where he was fishing, you know, he was looking for a fish to get. And then I think in this frame, this is where he saw the fish and then he dived down to catch them from, you know, the shots that you saw earlier. This is the same bird. And this is just sunrise shot, a little bit of flaring. And this is the Conowingo Dam, and you can see an equal portion of photographers and fishermen and fisherwomen here. But everybody's setting up and getting ready. And the dam, you can see there's water coming out. So ideally, there's going to be a lot of fish. And there was no wind in the morning. So it was ideal conditions for fishing if you're an eagle. But there just weren't that many eagles there that day. And then this is just a twilight shot, you know, just before the sun rose. So I got a nice silhouette of the photographers and fishermen there. So I really like this shot too. And this was National Harbor. I'll come back to those a little bit later if there's time. Okay, let me go back to the chat. And Joe says, on the OM3, can both a monochrome and a color recipe be saved to the same custom mode like C3? Or would it need to be saved, a monochrome recipe for C3 and a color recipe? No, you can save them to the same C3, but you have to remember to turn the creative dial from C3, you know, from color to mono. But otherwise, yeah, it'll save all the settings in both. And good morning, Plug Nichols. Good to see you. Better late than never. And Darko's here. Good to see you. I have to move the chat. Let me see. It says, I bought a 50 to 250 ZDX lens, super sharp from f4 to f8, and all the way to 250 millimeters. Okay. Yeah, Nikon has some really good glass. You know, generally speaking, I never had any issues with the glass that I shot when I had Nikon, you know, but I was all f-mount, right? The 85-1.8, the 21.8, the 51.8, you know, the 35 f2. That was a older f-mount D lens, you know, with the screw drive. All the lenses have always been excellent for them, and I think that continues. I don't really hear people complaining about Nikon glass, and honestly, a lot of the lenses coming out now, even the budget ones, are so good. It's hard to buy a bad lens. Just like it's hard to buy a bad camera these days. You can buy just about any camera lens combination, you'll get great results. And oh, thank you, Adam. 50 viewers and 11 likes for the stream. If you get a chance, hit the like button. Thank you. And Henry says, I have to ask, despite the fact that you often say that your jobs are far and few between and you seem to have lots of free time to do videos, yet you always have the latest equipment. Are you paid by photography manufacturers? No, I'm not paid at all. I wish. I wish I was paid. No, I'm not paid at all. But yeah, jobs are far and few between. My last photo job, paid photo job, my God, that was probably in the summer. I don't think I've had any this fall. And it's December 1st tomorrow, and I haven't been contacted for any events for December. That's a little bit unusual. Usually I get 2 or 3 events in the winter for Christmas parties and New Year's parties. It's a little worrisome. I have to reach out. But I think the underlying question is, how do I make a living? It's rough, man. It's rough. You know, I I make a little bit from the affiliate money, right? From using my Amazon links and stuff. And but yeah, my earnings overall, I'm below the poverty level when it comes to income for United States. I'm well below the poverty level. I'm just very, very frugal. All this gear you see is on credit because I'm really good at managing my credit. And it took me gosh, it took me 2 years to pay off my OM1 Mark II. I don't think I even had it paid off before I bought the OM3. Now the OM3 I was able to pay off because I had a couple of good photo jobs in the middle of the year, so I paid those off. But my overhead's low. Everything I don't have a lot of expenses. I really just have to cover my utilities and food and insurance and taxes. But other than that, you know, my Jeep is more than 20 years old. My other car is 9 years old. They're all paid off, and uh, yeah. So the underlying question, how do I survive, is because I'm very, very frugal. I don't buy other things. All my clothes I shop either Goodwill or on eBay, and I buy things, cheap, cheap as I can. Like I got right now, I'm wearing $10 jeans, and this is like a really expensive sweater for me, $20. This shirt I paid $8. Anyway, uh, that's the short answer. The VR in the lens and the Z7 and the 50 to 250 ZDX can be held rock solid to one. Nice. Love the eagle shots. Oh, thank you, Darko. And oh, hey, didn't have the notification for you being online. Hello. Hello, Henning. Good to see you. And I got that it's in my bag now, otherwise I'd pull it out. But I did get that little eyepiece, and that's really clever how you did that. The eyepiece and the hot shoe mount. I'm just afraid I'm going to lose that hot shoe clip. I may have lost it already. I'm pretty sure I know where it is, but it's not like right in front of me where I can grab it and put it on the camera. And Adam says, I'm going to offer this general compliment. What I enjoy about how you teach on these streams and your videos is that you give people time to think and you share your whole thought. Yeah, I'm a little long-winded sometimes. I guess that's the other way to say it, but I appreciate that. Why I always recommend your videos and channels to those wanting to, I think you meant learn. Yeah, there you go, learn. Thank you, Adam. Like I said, if particular person, if you connect with a particular person when you're trying to learn something, you connect with their teaching style, there's nothing better, right? But I don't connect with everybody. Some people I bore to tears because I am kind of long-winded. But then other people, they really appreciate that whole thought process, like yourself. And like I said, it's all about who you connect with. And I have an audience, just like Frono's Photo has an audience, just like Tony and Chelsea have their audience. Casey at Camera Conspiracy has an audience. So everybody has their own audience and people that they connect with. Some bigger than others, but that's just how it is. And Joe says, my son is a filmmaker, and he also says that now jobs are few and far between. He and his friends are also worried about AI. Yeah. Yeah, I think in the commercial side, AI is having a huge impact. Because another viewer of mine said his daughter worked at some production company where they did advertising. And when they used to have to hire a crew and rent out a location or find scout locations and get, uh, you know, site licenses and model releases and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, it was a whole thing, and it took a couple of weeks to get all that arranged to set up a shoot for an advertising campaign. She's now doing it using her computer in a few hours, like half a day. She can have a whole campaign done and not have to have all of that overhead. And of course, what she can charge, of course, accordingly, is much less, right? So I think in a lot of scenarios, AI is going to really have an impact. You know, I think on the creative side, you know, people are still going, you know, like fine art and things. People are still going to want authenticity, you know, something created by a human being. So in that sense, I don't think we need to worry too much. But yeah, certainly that's you know, that's one example of AI that I know is really having a big impact. Certain things that I do, like when I do, you know, I lost one of my clients. That's part of why the jobs, I mean, he was a pretty big client for me, but he didn't want to pay, you know, because I know my work is better than the person he's using now, but they got to be charging less. But yeah, I used to get pretty regular jobs from him and one other client, and I haven't heard peep from them in almost 2 years now. 1 year for one and 2 years for the other. The other client I have, she has another photographer she uses for about probably 80% of her jobs, and I'll get the other 20%. But she only does, you know, maybe a dozen properties a year, so I'll get 2 or 3, maybe 4 properties a year from her. And then she uses her other photographer, because the other photographer does drone work and marketing materials and all kinds of stuff, like full-fledged, you know, and I'm just a photographer. But price-wise, price is not the issue with her. You know, I'm charging appropriately for her, and her other photographer is charging appropriately. He's not cheap either. But like I said, I probably get 20% of her work, and the other primary photographer gets 80% because she does mostly high-end residential, and I'm not really a residential photographer. And good morning, Shri. Good to see you. And Henning says, if you get yourself a 3D printer, I'll send you a file. Man, I don't even. I one day maybe I'll do a 3D printer thing, but God, it's 3D printing worries me a little bit. It seems so complicated, although kids are doing it all the time. And the Z7 version 2 is $2,400 in Canada. I wish I had the cash for that. Yeah. Nice camera, but I thought you had a Z7 Mark 1. I don't see what the Z7 Mark 2 would do. Because a friend of mine was in the same, they had the Z7 Mark 1 and they wanted to buy the Z7 Mark 2, and I said, why? Why? You know? And this was before the Z8 came out. I was like, just get the Z8 when it comes out, because there was rumors about it. I said, just wait, you know? Coca-Cola did their Christmas vid all in AI, kind of sickening. I'm avoiding Coke products, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, we're not gonna put a dent in AI. You know, they're just it's here, and it's taking over a lot of things. So we're gonna have to learn to we're gonna have to adapt somehow to a life with AI around us. And Shri says, Fairfax Library, we can do 3D print free. It's one file at a time. Gosh, that's a whole thing. Somebody, you know, some company reached out to me to send me like some kind of 3D printer thing. They're going to send me a whole setup. And I said, no. I don't know what the hell a 3D printer is or what it can do. I mean, I've seen a few videos online and it doesn't look terrible, but it's just something I don't want to get into right now. I just can't do it. And Plug Nichols said, get a good 3D printer, and now it's almost plug and play. Very easy to use and pretty cheap. I guess. I don't know. It's so foreign to me, the idea of a 3D printer. I don't know. I guess my brain doesn't work in 3D. I'm so two-dimensional. That's why I love photography. Everything is two-dimensional, right? Okay, let me share a couple other pictures because I do have to head out to do this portrait thing. So this was I think this is a high-res shot here. Yeah, this is a high-res shot, and I cropped it down to 50 megapixels, but it's originally an 80 megapixel high-res shot mode. And I used a star filter, so that's why I'm getting these speculars. And then, of course, the trails are because I used a slow shutter and high-res shot mode combined. So I got really, really nice detail, you know, all the way around this image. And I'm pretty happy with this shot. It's not perfect, but I'm pretty happy with this shot. I got good dynamic range from the shadows, you know, retain good detail in the shadows all the way into the highlights. So I was really happy with this shot. You know, I lost a little bit of detail because I was, you know, I'm using a cheap star filter in the front, but I don't care about that. You know, I wanted that effect, so I used that filter. And this one I use my kaleidoscope filter. I was just messing around, trying different stuff. Because I'm going to go to they're doing a fireworks display every week until the New Year's, I think. So I'm going to try and go in every week and try something different with this particular location. So I'm experimenting a lot. This is my swirly vortex filter. I was experimenting a little bit with that. Same thing here. Now this I'm experimenting with zooming and using the vortex filter at the same time. I wanted to see what kind of look or effect that I got doing that. So that was kind of interesting. And this is simply a zoom pull. Now I mentioned, I think 2 weeks ago, that I wanted to do a zoom pull together with the star filter. And I kind of got the effect that I wanted, because originally in the images I wanted the bright points here at the end of the zoom to have a little bit of starlight effect, you know, this flaring around all the stars. So I need to fine tune this a little bit. This is but this is really close to what I wanted to do, is have these little points of stars at the end of these long trails. So this worked out pretty well, you know, as an experiment. And it's an interesting image, but it's got a lot of technical problems. You know, there's blurring, there's, you know, the noise levels are pretty high. It didn't work out. Exposure-wise, it's not very good, but the effect that I wanted is pretty much there, and there's some wobble in my tripod. So I need to work on my technique a little bit about zooming in and out, because I want to get these lines perfectly straight. This is another zoom pull. Again, you can see like down here. Oops. Let me zoom in. You know, these little points of light at the end, the star points at the end of the star trails here and here and here. I need to figure out some settings to amplify that a little bit, but I'm going to work on that. But zoom pull with star filter. And then this is just simply just going nuts, you know, shaking the camera around. I just wanted to see what would happen if I did that. So again, I thought it was interesting. I got these nice little points, star points around the speculars in some cases. So I kind of like that effect. And these are all experimental. This is my first attempt at trying some different things and being creative. and I wanted to hopefully, by the New Year's, I will have gotten a couple of really special images. I don't feel like these images are very special. They're just okay, right? Uh, Primarily experimental on my part. So that's what I was doing yesterday. All right. And the Z2 has dual processor and extra card slot with CF Express is the draw. Right. So the autofocus is slightly better with the dual processing. And the dual card slot, I don't know. I don't know if it's worth the extra money. If you're doing more professional work and paid jobs, then that would make a little more sense. But I still don't think it's enough, because it's double the price from a Z7 Mark 1 to a Z7 Mark 2. But if you think you're going to stop there, right? Meaning you're not going to go for the Z8, then yeah, sell off your Z7 Mark 1 and get the Z7 Mark 2 if the processing is going to make a difference, the dual processor and dual card slot. But to me, those are very, very minor updates. Because I'm guessing you want to do your birding and wildlife with the Z7 Mark II with your telephoto lenses. And in that scenario, it will probably do a little better. But I don't know how much better. I don't know how much difference there is. So you might want to watch some videos comparing the Z7 Mark I to the Mark II for birding and wildlife. Watch several and see if everyone has a consensus that one is much better than the other. And if that's the case, then the dual card slot is just a bonus. And have a great day, Rob. All right, I will. Thank you. I hope you have a good day too. And Jan is here. Jan says, hi, Rob. I have a question for you. What mirrorless cameras do you own right now, and which one of them do you use on a weekly basis? Well, definitely the OM3 is almost my everyday camera. But yeah, I still have a lot of cameras. I haven't really sold anything off recently since I last talked about it. But Fujifilm X-H2, Sony A7R5, Canon R8, Nikon DF, and Fujifilm. Yeah, I mentioned the X-H2. And then OM1 Mark II, EM5 Mark III, Pen F, 2 of those. I think that's, and my Pentax monochrome, my Pentax K3 Mark I color camera. And yeah, that's the gist of it. And then a plethora of non-interchangeable lens cameras like the Leica Deluxe 8, Panasonic LX100 Mark II, LX5, TG5, XZ2, bunch of little compact cameras. But yeah, on a weekly basis, I mean, in order of use, I would say would be the OM3 is number 1. Number 2 would probably be, it's probably pretty equal from there. It just depends what lens or gear I'm reviewing for third-party lenses. I get a lot of Sony lenses, so I use the Sony a lot because they send me lenses for Sony. And then I use the Fujifilm because they send me lenses for Fujifilm. That's really the only time I use those cameras is when they send me a lens. And then I usually end up trading the lenses in for something for my OM3 when I'm done. And good morning, Wayne. Good to see you. And Adam says, just saw Another video on people no longer having hobbies like they did. I have had too many people instead just scroll through their phones instead of, yeah, yeah, it would be nice. I think we're going to see a trend of people getting off their phones and getting out there in the real world again, because it's getting ridiculous. Everywhere you look, you see people doing this just on their phones and not doing anything else. It's such a waste of time. Like, I was at my family gathering, and the kids were really good, actually, but a lot of times, they were really good this time. I did notice they weren't on their phones the whole time I was there. They were engaging and having conversation and talking. I didn't see the phones at all. Uh, except when we kind of separated, then the adults talk and the kids go over there. That's when the kids kind of went off on their own. They're kind of, glued to their phones. Oh, digging the experimental stuff. Okay. And Wayne says, everyone has their face buried in their phones. I know, right? Perhaps people watching Rob counts as a hobby. Oh my God. I hope not. And Wayne says, I got the GH7 on Friday. Interesting camera. I like the ergonomics aside from it being huge. Yeah. GH7 is a really interesting camera. It is big, but it's got so much stuff, right? And Big Lens says, why a Pentax black and white? It was mainly out of curiosity, right? At first. And now it's like, I really love that camera. And I love the output from it. Just the difference in tonality in a dedicated black and white camera versus saying just using black and white mode on a color camera, there's a pretty significant difference. Now, I've always said that if you put two black and white images in front of me in a blind test, I'm not going to be able to tell the difference if one came from a color camera and one came from a black and white. Okay, let's be honest. But when I take the raw image of the same thing and I take a picture, you can see a little difference. I don't know if I have, because I remember I was doing some black and white portraits, and I was trying to imitate Yusuf Karsh, and I could not get the tonality of the black and white images, and I just chalked it up to, he's using film, black and white film, and I'm using a color camera and converting it. But I chalked it up to it being the film, and the Pentax monochrome is so close to actual black and white film. I was really impressed, and now I'm like, I've fallen in love with that camera. Let me see if I can find a quick example. So here's an example, right? I've already labeled them down here, but this is the Pentax monochrome. This is the Pen F converted to black and white. It's just monoprofile number 1. So none of the fancy stuff, just a simple black and white conversion. And you can see a huge difference in the tonality between these two. There's just, the gradation between the grays and the tones. I don't know. I just was so amazed. This illustrates it pretty well. Let me see if there's anything else in here. Yeah, like this one here. Pentax K3 on the left, Kodak 6x6 films, from my Hasselblad on the right. How close are these? these are so close. And I never was able to get the images from any of my color cameras to even really be that close to an actual film stock. So the Pentax monochrome is very, very similar to Tri-X 400 in this case. But yeah, long story short, it was kind of out of curiosity at first, and then because I was like, people keep saying the monochrome camera is different. So I'm like, okay, let me try it. And I got a really good deal on it. At the time, I only paid like, I think 1,400. It was like 13 and change, and then shipping and tax, it came out to 1,400. And it's, like new condition. So I can't, I have terrible gas. That's also part of it. But yeah, the Pentax monochrome is pretty amazing. Uh, Jan says, that definitely says a lot about the OM3, right? I'm thinking about upgrading my Fuji X-T20 to a newer one, mainly for better AF. However, don't know if trying Sony would be better. Yeah, I don't, if you're open to changing camera systems altogether, uh, you're just gonna have to try. I'm not a good person to ask because I find the autofocus pretty decent on all the cameras. But if you need, if you're talking about just everyday camera, street shooting and stuff, upgrading to another Fuji, so you're gonna have to buy all new lenses, makes sense to me. You can get an XE5, you can get a maybe even get the XT30 or the XT50 would be a really nice upgrade. Um, there's a lot of options right within Fujifilm. And like I said, I find the autofocus on Fuji fine, but it's not, if you look online, everybody says it's terrible. Not everybody, but a lot of people don't like the focusing on the Fujifilm. But I don't really have a problem with it. And Anthony says, OM system needs to do something to get there. OM system users some confidence that they'll be around for many years, such as introducing an all-new WOW camera. I guess. I don't know why OM system I'm sure OM system is not thinking about putting a camera out there just to instill confidence that they're going to be around a while. They're putting out a camera out there because they want to make sales and make money. Now, as an OM system user, I don't think I just don't think OM system has to worry about it so much because uh, they don't have a huge professional market, right? There's not, I just don't see professional, high-end professional photographers like that use Canon and Nikon and Sony, high-end stuff, right? Doing, national, multinational campaigns. uh, because those professionals, particularly people that use Canon, those are the ones that would worry about if a camera industry's, if Canon would go out of business because they need to be able to go on site on location. If they have any problem with their camera, they can get it fixed, right? Or get a replacement pretty quickly. I just don't see OM systems in that same position that they need to build confidence in the user base that they're going to be around a while because uh, if their camera, like I said, I don't know how many people buying a camera for the first time, like your average enthusiast or beginning photographer, they're not looking on the shelf and say, "Oh, I would buy OM systems, but I don't know if they're going to be around next year." I don't see that thought process. People buying a camera for the first time, I think, are looking at specs and going into reviews and et cetera, et cetera. You know, what kind of features does it have? What's my lens selection? They might be, if even they go that far, what's the lens selection? How many people ask, what's the lens selection like on a camera when they go buy a camera for the first time? For the existing user base, as you're stating here, me personally, I'm not worried about if OM6 is going to be around next year or not, because if they are, great. I want them to survive and do well. If they're not, it's okay. There's so many cameras to choose from at this point, and certainly on the used market, you're going to get a lot. There's a lot of cameras we can buy if we want to stay in the OM system family. You know, eventually in 5 to 10 years, that's going to dry out pretty quickly. But I don't think they need to do something to build the confidence of their existing user base. I just don't see that being necessary. They need to do something to get new customers. That's what their push needs to be. Like I said, I think they succeeded on the wildlife side. They got a lot of wildlife photographers and maybe even macro photographers using their system and enjoying it. But they need to get people into the system, period, from the beginning. And that's why I think an OM20 would make a lot of sense. But coming out with a new 25, 40 megapixel camera with all these bells and whistles, that can wait. That can wait. Most enthusiasts like myself, I don't think we're worried about the extra megapixels or the tiny bit of extra performance we might get out of, you know, the system for different things. You know, Robin Wong has said repeatedly he'd like to see another stop extra of dynamic range performance, right? But for me personally, I'm very content with the cameras they have now, and I will be for probably years to come. Like I could go out and shoot with my EM10 Mark II right now if I didn't break it, but I could shoot with my EM5 Mark III and still get great results, right? I'm not worried when I take out my EM5 Mark III that I'm missing out on megapixels or dynamic range or color depth. You know, I'm not worried about it, right? Or when I take out my TG5, you know, let's go very extreme. I'm not worried about those things. So if OM system, yeah, it would be nice to see they're innovating and coming out with new things. We all want that. But I think their priority needs to be more on getting new customers. And because trust me, doesn't matter what OM system comes out with, right? I think Jimmy Chang just did a video about, you know, how Nikon Z6 III and the Canon, I forget what it is, the Canon R6 III. Anyway, how great these cameras are at the price point, and they're doing everything OM systems can do, even better in some cases, that OM system needs to come out with a camera that is wow or magical, right? To stay competitive and stay in business and to do well. I don't think so. My thinking is they need to get new customers and they need to connect with customers in a way that no other, you know, in a very similar way that Fujifilm connects with its customers. There are some diehard Fuji customers, and there's new customers buying into Fuji because of whatever connection they were able to make with that. Fuji's doing something right. I know their market share isn't like leaps and bounds or even close to, say, Sony, Canon, Nikon, but they have a customer base and they continually get new customers with their cameras. Versus OM Systems, they got nothing to draw a brand new customer in. You know, the OM5 Mark II is a great camera, but that's not going to draw new people in. Nice try with the sand beige color, but they made a marketing mistake and called it sand beige instead of something fancy like Desert Storm or, you know, whatever, right? They didn't come up with a fancy name. They came out with the most boring name for a color ever. That's bad marketing. They're not going to connect with consumers, new buyers, by calling their camera sand beige. You know, They need to do something along those lines. I don't think coming out, because nobody's going to switch to OM systems because they have more megapixels, better autofocus, whatever. Nobody's going to switch to OM systems for technical reasons, technical specs, because it's never going to be able to compete with a larger sensor. You know, it just can't. All things being equal, yeah, they might get a little leap here, but all things being equal, you know, a rising tide raises all ships, as they say. Now, if they can do some really fancy things with the computational stuff, like I talked about last week or the week before, that like Insta360 is doing with the voice recognition, the hand gestures, the active HDR, and whatever other computational things, combining ND filters with high-res shot mode, combining grad filters with, you know, focus bracketing, I don't know, whatever. Being able to really have some interesting combinations of computational features in addition to new computational features, some wild things like live comp has been around so long, but that's a crazy good computational feature that really I haven't seen in any other camera system. But it's been there forever. They need to come up with new things like that, and things that Insta360 is doing with their AI chip built in their little pocket, you know, little action camera. On the technology side, but on the marketing side, they need to make an OM5 entry-level camera, and they need to amp their marketing up in a way that connects with new buyers that they're just not doing now. You know, I'm a big fan of OM systems, no question, and I love that sand beige color. But, you know, calling it sand beige doesn't excite any interest or, you know, whatever. Okay. I'm going to have to wrap it up here soon, but let me get to the last final bits of chat. Oh, happy Thanksgiving, ATR Bear. And just putting out the idea that OM is a great for street would sell more cameras. Yep. And Jen says, your advice is exactly what I think. I already have the Fuji lenses I need with my X-T20. The problem is false confirmations. You'll get plenty of green focus confirmation that are slightly out. Yeah. I wish I could give you a better feel for my experience with like the XH2, which would, you know, be fairly representative of all their modern cameras like the X-T50. But yeah, I stay within the Fuji system. I wouldn't switch. And OM system needs to stop fighting the stigma of small sensor and use it to their advantage. Small sensor, small cameras. They need young crowd or they are in trouble. Yeah, I think they're already in trouble, but whatever it is, maybe your idea is the right one, but they need to really do something about their marketing. They're not doing it right. My two EM10 Mark IIIs have had failures and I need new MFT camera. On the screen stopped working. One of the screens stopped working, the other one, the EVF. As you say, they need to bring out an OM20, but with good quality and specs, yes. Like the EM10 original and the EM10 Mark III. Yep. OM system needs to go back to the idea of wildlife and street and action sports and portraits. and yeah. Like do it all, right? And oh, Moxie's Heather. Wish they had upgraded the firmware more often. Immediately it cuts into the bottom line, but if my firmware on old cameras updated, I might not buy a new camera version. Maybe. I'm kind of in the opposite. Like if they have a firmware that will improve the autofocus, you know, I'll take it. But I don't know. I'm just so content with the OM3. I'm so happy with that camera. But yeah, more firmware updates would be great. They need to make from camera to cell phone for social sharing easier. It seems Fuji has made that easier once it's set up. Maybe. I don't know. That's one of Tony Northrup's big gripes, is not being able to share photos from your camera quickly to social media. Yeah, the OM3 refurb deal was crazy. I hope some of you got that deal. Ugh. And Jan says OM3 screwed up by putting the old processor on the OM5. It made it obsolete in many aspects, specifically video right from the launch. On Fuji, you get entry level with 6K open gate and 10. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was a little disappointed with the specs on the OM5 Mark II. I'd hoped it got the OM1, you know, guts, but nope. Love my Sam Beige, but I suspect I'm the minority. No, I think Sam Beige is awesome. I'm just saying from the perspective of marketing, calling it Sam Beige was kind of meh, you know? And yeah, I know Marco loves his Sam Beige as well. It's really a beautiful camera, and I've heard comments from other people how nice that camera is. You know, in terms of looks. And I was really tempted to get one myself, but I really have to temper my gas a little bit. I'm trying to think, other than the Pentaxes, I don't think I've bought any cameras this year. No, I bought a Deluxe 8 and my Pentaxes, but that's not bad considering all of the camera releases that are out. Because we have Z6 III, which is really nice, R6 III, or yeah, whatever. The Canon Nikons that are really nice that are out right now. And the Fujis have come out. There's a lot of nice cameras come out. But the OM3 came out, and that's just does everything for me. I just love that camera. But okay, I'm gonna call it here because I have to head out to go do that portrait shoot. I'll try and share those images next week, in the next week's stream. And you know, good and bad alike, you know, because I might totally mess it up like I messed up my birding the other day with the settings. I don't know what I did. But it's been great seeing everybody. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, great rest of your week. And if you have a good day, a good week, you're going to have a good life, right? So I heard. So eat healthy, exercise. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget, if you can, support the channel. You know, I have links down below, affiliate links for all the Black Friday and all that other stuff. Or you can make a donation, but it's all greatly appreciated. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope to see you again soon.